Don't untie me, just do it. The words hung in the burning air like a death sentence she'd already accepted. Jack Callahan froze. His hand hovered over the knife at his belt. The sun pressed down on both of them like the weight of God's judgment. The woman slumped against a shattered barrel in the middle of nowhere, her wrists bound with rope that had cut so deep the blood had dried black. Her dress torn, her skin branded, her eyes empty. She wasn't asking for mercy. She was begging for an ending. Jack had seen death before. He'd caused it. But he'd never seen someone so broken they'd rather die than be saved. The sun was merciless that day. It scorched everything it touched. The earth cracked beneath it. The air shimmered like broken glass. In the middle of that burning emptiness, she had stumbled through tall, dead grass. Each step a war she was losing. She fell. The ground tore at her knees. Dust filled her mouth, choking her. She'd crawled toward that barrel like it was salvation. When she reached it, she tried to pull herself up. The wood gave way, leaving splinters in her palms. She leaned against it anyway. It was all she had left. Her dress was stained with dirt and blood. Her hair clung to her face in wet strands. Flies gathered on her arms, her lips, the open wounds. She tried to brush them away, but her hands were too weak. That's when she heard the hooves. Slow, steady, getting closer. Panic surged through her body, but her legs wouldn't obey. She pressed her forehead against the hot wood and whispered, "Not again. Please, not again." The rider stopped a few paces away. Boots hit the dirt. The sound of spurs. A shadow fell across her. She turned her head slightly, vision swimming. The man's face was hidden by the sun, but she saw the gun on his hip. Her heart pounded once, twice, then steadied into a hollow beat. She forced the words out, barely more than breath. "Don't untie me. Just do it." Jack Callahan had ridden out that morning looking for stray cattle, not salvation, not responsibility, just another day in a life he'd been trying to forget. He was 58 years old, a man who'd lost everything that mattered, his wife to fever, his ranch to debt, his brother to choices neither of them could undo. He'd sworn off saving people years ago. He'd buried too many already, and yet here he was. The woman's lips trembled. Her eyes were open but distant, like she was already gone. He saw the bruises, the brand on her arm, a crude W burned into her skin, the dirt caked into every line of her face. Jack took off his hat and let the sun hit his weathered face. "Miss," he said softly, "you're safe now." She laughed, a sound broken and small. "Safe?" Her voice cracked on the word. "There's no safe." Not with him still breathing. Jack's eyes narrowed. "Who?" She looked at him, pupils wide and unfocused. "Wade." Her body went still, her head dropped forward. She collapsed. Jack caught her before she hit the dirt. Her skin burned with fever. He lifted her easily, her body limp as a rag doll. He stared at the horizon, jaw tight. Wade. He knew that name. He hated it, and he knew this wasn't chance. He glanced down at the woman in his arms, her wrists still bound, her pulse weak. In her silence, he heard something he hadn't in years, the sound of responsibility. "All right, miss," he muttered. "You picked the wrong man to beg from, because I ain't the one who'll kill you." He cut the ropes with his pocket knife. The fibers snapped. Her hands fell limp, the skin raw and bruised. "Easy now," he whispered. She didn't answer. Her eyes rolled back. Jack lifted her onto his horse and mounted up behind her. The ride back to the ranch was quiet except for the wind. Every few minutes she'd twitch, whispering things that didn't make sense. Names, places, bits of prayers. He didn't listen too close. He'd learned long ago that pain had its own language. By the time they reached his ranch, the sun was sinking low. The old place sat tired and silent, paint long gone from the fences, the barn leaning like it had given up years ago. It wasn't much, but it was safe. Jack laid her on a cot in the spare room. He poured water and touched a bit to her lips. She stirred, but her eyes stayed closed, the fever still burning. He sat beside her, rubbing the back of his neck, thinking how he'd sworn off this, how he'd promised himself no more. When she finally opened her eyes, the first thing she did was reach for her wrists. She stared at the rope burns, then at him. "You untied me," she whispered. Seemed like the decent thing to do. Her eyes searched his face. Suspicious at first, then softer. "Why help me?" "You don't even know me." Jack shrugged. "Guess I don't need to. You looked like someone who's had enough hurt for one lifetime." She stared past him, lips trembling. "My name's Clara. I was a teacher once, back east. The word teacher didn't sound right in this empty land. What were you doing out here, Clara?" She hesitated. "I thought I was coming to teach." But they lied. Her voice cracked. "They said it was a school." It wasn't. Jack looked at her a long time. He didn't ask more. He didn't need to. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain far off in the distance. As he stepped out into the fading light, a single thought crossed his mind. If Clara was telling the truth, then the devil himself was back in Montana. The next morning was too quiet. Jack was out by the trough watering his horse. The heat was already building, the kind that made the air dance above the dirt. Clara sat on the porch wrapped in one of Jack's old shirts, watching the horizon like something out there was still chasing her. She didn't talk much. Jack didn't ask much. That was fine by both of them. By noon, the cicadas had gone loud. The air smelled like storm and dust. That's when Jack heard hooves, not from town, from the south road. A rider appeared, small, slow, her horse limping. The woman slid off before the horse even stopped, her dress covered in trail dust. Jack blinked once, then twice. Eliza. She looked thinner than he remembered, hair pinned messy, face pale but determined. "But, Jack," she said, voice trembling, "I didn't know where else to go." Jack frowned. "Eliza Reed, Tom's wife. You look like hell, girl. What happened?" She didn't answer right away. She just reached into her saddlebag and pulled out a small wooden box, held it tight like it might disappear. "I brought something. You need to see it." Jack took the box, felt the weight of it, heavier than it looked. Inside were papers, letters, names written in neat cursive, receipts, money, and one thing that made Jack's blood run cold. Tom's handwriting. "Eliza," he said quietly, "what is this?" Her voice cracked. "It's everything, Jack. Everything Wade's been doing, and Tom's part in it." She took a breath that sounded more like a sob. "I tried to stop him. I begged him, but he said Wade owns him now, said there's no way out except death." Jack's jaw tightened. He looked at the papers again, the ink still fresh, names of women, payments, dates. He felt something dark crawl up his spine. "Liza, you shouldn't have brought this here. If Wade finds out you took it, he'll send men." "I know," she said, eyes filling with tears. "That's why I came to you. You're the only one he's afraid of." Jack didn't answer. He just turned toward the horizon, the sun glaring off his hat brim. He could almost feel the storm brewing miles away, rolling closer every second. Behind him, Clara stepped onto the porch, eyes wide as she saw Eliza for the first time. 3 lives now tangled together by fear, by family, and by one man's evil. Jack picked up the box, holding it like a curse. "If Wade's coming," he muttered, "then hell's coming with him. If you're still here with me, hit that subscribe button, because what's coming next might just change everything." The sun hit hard the next morning. Jack rode out with the weight of a man who'd made his choice. Behind him, the ranch shrank into the shimmering heat. Ahead, the empty plain stretched toward the broken church Eliza had spoken of. She'd begged him not to go alone. Clara had said nothing, only watched from the porch with that quiet fear in her eyes. Jack had seen that look before. It always meant goodbye. The air shimmered as he rode, dust clung to his coat, sweat to his neck. By the time the steeple came into view, the world had gone silent except for the sound of flies. The church stood half buried in weeds, windows gone, doors hanging loose. Jack dismounted, tied his horse to a fence rail, and waited. "Anyone here?" he called. Only the echo answered. Then a voice drifted from the shade. "Always thought you'd die slow, Captain." Jack turned his head just enough to see him. Corbin, Wade's right hand, a man he'd once fought beside when law and chaos looked the same. Jack sighed. "So Wade sent you." Corbin smiled, small and mean. He sent me to remind you where you stand. You don't belong in his business. Jack's hand rested near his Colt. I'm not in his business. I'm cleaning it up. Corbin's grin faded. For a moment, the world stopped breathing. Jack said quietly, "You could still walk away, son." Then came the sound that never needed words. 2 guns clearing leather. The shot cracked the silence wide open. Dust leapt from the ground. Jack staggered back, shoulder burning. Corbin dropped to his knees, blood dark against the dust. He tried to speak, but the wind carried his breath away. Jack stood still, chest heaving, smoke rising from his gun barrel. He looked down at the dying man and saw something glinting near his hand. A brass lighter. Jack picked it up, turned it in his palm. Letters scratched into the side. T.C. Tom Callahan. The sound of the wind changed then, hot air sweeping over the grass, carrying the smell of rain and gunpowder. Jack clenched his fist around the lighter. For the first time in years, his eyes burned. He looked toward the west where dark clouds were gathering fast. "All right, little brother," he muttered. "If that's how it is, then come find me." Thunder rolled across the plains. The first drops of rain hit the dirt like blood, and somewhere far beyond that storm, Tom Callahan was already riding home. The rain came fast that night, cold and sudden, washing the dust and blood from the land. Jack rode hard, one hand pressed to his shoulder, the other gripping the reins. Lightning tore the sky wide open, lighting his path home. He didn't pray, he just whispered his brother's name with every breath. When the ranch came into view, the storm was already tearing through the valley. The barn door slammed open and shut in the wind. Clara stood near the porch holding a lantern. Behind her, Eliza cried out from the house. Jack jumped off his horse and ran inside. Tom was there, wet, angry, shaken with something between rage and regret. He held a gun, but his eyes were worse than the barrel. They were full of shame. "Why, Tom," Jack's voice was tired, not angry. "You could have built something honest. You could have been better." Tom's lips trembled. "I tried, but Wade owns everything. The law, the people, me." "You made your choices," Jack said softly, "but you can still choose again." Tom's hand shook. Then came the sound that split silence in two, a single gunshot. When the smoke cleared, Tom lay on the floor, his gun still warm. Jack dropped to his knees beside him, blood soaked into the old wooden planks, the same floor they'd once learned to walk on as boys. Tom's eyes searched his brother's face. Being decent, it never saved anyone. Jack shook his head, tears mixing with rain. "It saved you now." Tom's chest rose once, then fell still. The wind outside began to calm. Somewhere far away, the thunder rolled back into the mountains. Jack stepped out into the rain. Clara was there, holding Eliza close. No words were needed. He just nodded once, the kind of nod that meant everything and nothing at the same time. By dawn, the storm had passed. Jack saddled 2 horses and handed Clara an old book. Great Expectations. The pages were worn, the spine broken, but it was all he had left from the life before. "Keep this," he said. "Teach again. Make it mean something." She smiled faintly. "You're coming with us, aren't you?" Jack looked toward the northern hills, light touching the wet grass. "I'll ride a while. There's still work to finish." As they parted, the sun broke through the clouds. For the first time in years, the land looked clean. Clara rode north with Eliza, 2 women who'd survived hell and chose to keep living. Jack rode west, toward the mountains where Wade's empire still stood. He carried Tom's lighter in his pocket, the box of evidence in his saddlebag, and a promise in his heart that some debts had to be paid in full. The road ahead was long, dangerous, maybe even fatal, but Jack Callahan had learned something in that storm. Sometimes being decent doesn't change the world, but it changes the few hearts still listening. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. So tell me, friend, do you still believe a man can find redemption after losing everything? Do you think decency still matters in a world like ours? If this story made you stop for even a second, give it a like and subscribe before you go, so you can ride with us again next time. Because out here in the West, there are still more stories waiting for the dawn. Stories about men who chose right when wrong was easier. About women who refused to stay broken. About brothers who loved each other even when love meant letting go. And about the kind of courage that doesn't roar, it whispers, "Don't untie me, just do it," and then chooses to untie anyway.